Welcome to the Cheating and Love Tales channel. You're too late to realize it. I can still hear that sentence echo in the back of my skull, rattling around with 1,000 other regrets. Maybe I'm hearing my father's voice, or maybe it's some twisted version of my own conscience. It doesn't matter. The meaning is the same. I should have seen it all sooner. And now, I'm standing in the wreckage, trying to force a calm exterior over a heart that's like broken glass inside my chest. My name is Michael Reynolds, and I thought I had everything figured out. I was wrong. They say a man is supposed to be strong, a provider, a rock. I believed it too. But let me tell you, there's a special kind of pain in waking up one day and realizing you've been quietly replaced in your own home, in your own marriage, and everyone else seemed to sense it but you. That's the moment your gut hollows out, your mind short-circuits, and your breath catches somewhere between a laugh and a sob. You want to keep your dignity, but you also want to collapse. So you stand there, not moving, not sure if you're still capable of love or fury or anything at all. I remember the day it all started to unravel, or maybe it was just the day I finally found the first thread to pull on. I was sitting at my home desk, analyzing our joint bank account because something felt off. A series of small but unexplained withdrawals, the final one being a reservation at a hotel we never used. It was less the money, and more the pattern. In my line of work, financial analysis, you learn to notice patterns. This one spelled trouble. My heart sank. My hand shook. I ran the numbers 3-4 times. In the hush of that moment, a part of me died. I confronted her, Elizabeth, my wife, and watched her lips twitch as I laid out the evidence. My voice was surprisingly steady, each word enunciated like I was reading from a case file. She tried to hide behind a fragile smile, tried to wave it off as work-related. And when that didn't hold, she shrugged helplessly, claiming it was a gift for a friend. But I knew. I kept pressing. I laid out every suspicious expense, the dates and times that didn't match her usual routine. She wilted, cornered in our own living room. Those eyes I used to adore flickered with guilt. She looked away, refusing to meet my gaze. The hush that followed was a thunderous silence. It told me everything I needed to know. But that was just the beginning. An affair can feel like 1,000 small betrayals strung together, each one slicing you open a little more. A missed phone call, a text she won't let you see, sudden new lingerie that you definitely never got to appreciate. And the worst part is how you start seeing every past moment in a different light. That time she came home a little too happy. That time she smelled like cologne that wasn't yours. That time she said she was meeting a friend for coffee but didn't take her car. It all replays in your mind like a grim detective movie, and you're left feeling like the biggest fool in town. She spoke in fragments, apologizing and explaining, but never giving the full story. She begged me to believe it was a mistake, that it wasn't serious. I laughed bitterly at that. Serious? We had a life, a house, a son, and I'd find out soon enough the biggest betrayal. The child I thought was mine was not. But I'm getting ahead of myself. At first, it was just suspicion about money and a hotel room. What a sad, mundane place for love to die, right? I'd always considered myself a level-headed guy. Solid, dependable. I provided. I did the math. I looked at problems from all angles before making a decision. Yet with Elizabeth, I found myself unraveling. When you put your heart on the line, logic gets overshadowed by raw emotion. I felt my throat tighten whenever I saw her phone light up with a text. I started rummaging through her purse when she wasn't looking. I checked her emails, her social media, her receipts. I even installed a small app on her phone to track the GPS data, something I once promised I'd never do. But betrayal changes you. It eats at your sense of honor and trust, turning you into someone you scarcely recognize. I guess I learned quickly that this wasn't some fling destined to burn out. He had a name. Anthony Delgado. A few months younger than her. A massage therapist she'd met at some spa event. The moment I discovered his name, I felt my chest tighten. I stared at his picture online. Tall, fit, confident smile. I hated him with every fiber of my being. It got worse. One night, after Elizabeth claimed she was going to visit a friend, I followed her. Yeah, it's a desperate move, but I couldn't stand living in the dark. I tailed her car, all the way to a downtown hotel. I sat in my car, engine off, watching her walk in wearing a black dress that hugged her figure. My figure, or so I once believed. I saw the way she nervously looked around. Then he appeared, stepping out of a sleek elevator, smiling at her with a warmth that should have been mine. They embraced, and in that brief moment, the rest of the world stopped existing. I'd never considered myself the jealous type, but jealousy is an animal that hides in the shadows of your psyche until it senses betrayal. My blood pounded. My hands trembled on the steering wheel. I glimpsed her lips brushing against his ear. The look in her eyes, desire, anticipation. That was my wife. But she looked like a stranger lost in passion for another man. My entire identity threatened to collapse under that single image. Then they disappeared into the hotel corridor. I could have rushed in, pounded on the door, caused a scene. But I stayed frozen. I was too ashamed, maybe. A part of me wanted to preserve a shred of dignity. Another part was stunned into paralysis by the magnitude of this betrayal. Finally, I drove away with a mind numb from rage and heartbreak. Time blurred after that. I returned home, sat in the dark living room, and stared at the muted television. My phone buzzed at one point, Elizabeth texting me about being stuck at her friend's house. I let it ring. I lost track of the hours. My reflection in the black TV screen looked hollowed out, like a ghost. In that moment, I felt more dead than alive. When she finally came home, I was still there, silent in the darkness. She flicked on the lights, found me with my head in my hands. The look on her face told me she knew I knew, but neither of us spoke. Instead, she walked to the bedroom, shoulders sagging. I heard the door click shut. I sat there all night, choking on the taste of betrayal. The days that followed, we did this dance of half-truths and forced civility. She avoided me as if the weight of her guilt was too much to bear. I kept rummaging for more evidence, not even sure what I hoped to find. Closure. Maybe the satisfaction of cornering her with absolute proof. That's when the DNA test came into play. You see, somewhere in the haze of suspicion, it dawned on me that our son, Jack, had a few physical features that never quite matched me. People used to say, he looks so much like Elizabeth. And I believed it. Why wouldn't I? But once you entertain the suspicion that your wife is cheating, every small difference looms huge. I mailed in the test kit. There was a moment of moral conflict. Was I betraying Jack by doubting him? But the fear was stronger. I needed to know. Weeks passed. My chest tightened every time I thought about the test. My mind waged war with itself, part of me hoping it would confirm he was mine, part of me bracing for the worst. The envelope arrived on a Monday afternoon. Elizabeth was out, claiming some grocery run. I remember the sun shining too bright through the window, forming a blinding glare on the table. My hands didn't tremble as I opened the envelope. I thought they would. But by then, I was in a numb place, halfway expecting a gut punch. Reading the result was surreal. Probability of paternity, 0%. I felt a scorching burn in my chest, like a brand pressed against my ribcage. And yet on the outside, I stayed disturbingly calm. A man's pride is a fragile thing. I had poured so much of my identity into fatherhood. I changed diapers, sang lullabies, taught Jack how to throw a baseball. Now some lab test was telling me that every single memory was built on a lie. I would have slammed my fist into the wall, but I was beyond that. I just sat, stared at those numbers, and waited for the pain to pass. It never did. It just grew, shifting from shock to anger, from anger to a cold determination that something had to give. I confronted Elizabeth about it that same evening. We were in the kitchen. The coffee maker hummed in the background. I handed her the paper. She tried to reach for my arm, tears brimming in her eyes. "Michael, she started, but I pulled away. I didn't want her to see how broken I was inside. Instead, I looked into her eyes and said, "Is he Anthony's?" She covered her face and gave a small nod. That was it. My world shattered in that second. Everything after that conversation felt like I was living underwater, sounds muffled and movements slow. There was a swirling chaos in my head, but outwardly I was dead calm. A stone in the middle of a raging storm. She cried, apologized, tried to explain, but her words blurred into white noise. I just stood there, reading the lines on that DNA test, as if I could will them to change. At some point, I walked out of the house. I found myself pacing the sidewalk, breathing in the cold night air, struggling to find a reason not to lose my mind. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I looked at the screen. Anthony Delgado, that bastard. He had no idea I had his number, of course, but once I'd discovered his identity, I dug up every piece of contact info I could. A surge of fury shot through me. I hit the dial button before I could think better of it. He answered in a subdued tone, obviously not expecting me. "Hello." I stood there, letting the silence stretch. Then I spoke, each word clipped. "We need to talk." He cleared his throat. "Who is this?" I forced a calm I didn't feel. "Michael Reynolds, Elizabeth's husband." A long pause. I could hear his breath catch. "Listen, man." I cut him off. "Face to face. 15 minutes. There's a park near the corner of Bayview and Carter. Be there." And I hung up. When I arrived, he was already standing near a playground bench, fidgeting with a business card in his hands, his worthless emblem of professionalism. He looked like a trapped animal. Good. I walked up, heartbeat pounding in my ears, but I kept my face impassive. He offered some lame greeting. "I'm sorry. I know you're upset." As if that covered it. Upset. My life was in ruins, and this man was the reason. I wanted to pummel him. My fists clenched at my sides. He must have seen the tension in my stance because he stepped back. But I didn't attack. Instead, I stared him down and said, "This is just the beginning. The real consequences are still coming." My voice was quiet, controlled, and more threatening than if I'd screamed. For a second, I saw fear flicker across his face. "Good." He stammered something about, "I never meant to hurt anybody." I clenched my jaw and took a slow breath, trying to keep from snapping. Then I turned and walked away, each step feeling heavier than the last. That was the moment I decided. If she wanted him, if she was going to lie to me and break our vows, I'd take the only revenge that made sense. Leave her to face the fallout. Let them figure it out. Let them explain everything to Jack when he grows up. Let them deal with the mess they created. My heart might be shattered, but at least I still had my dignity. So I planned. I moved mechanically for the next few days, going about my routine, watching Elizabeth flit around the house like a frightened bird. The tension was suffocating. She tried to approach me, to talk, but I refused to open up. I'd made up my mind. She didn't get a second chance to crush me. Night after night, I pretended to sleep while the storm of betrayal churned in my chest. I imagined them together, her lips on his, her hands tracing the lines of his body. The humiliation stabbed me repeatedly, but I stayed silent, biding my time. One day, she'd wake up, and I'd be gone, and that would be the day she realized what she lost. On the final evening, just before midnight, I packed my essentials, a suitcase with clothes, a few personal documents, and the watch my father had left me. The rest, she could keep it. The house, the furniture, the memories. I stuffed them all into a mental box labeled "Dead Things" and locked it tight. The only photo I took was one of me and my father when I was a kid, my father's arm around me, both of us smiling on our bikes. That piece of my life was untainted. I paused by Jack's room. He was asleep, his small chest rising and falling. Guilt tore through me. What kind of father abandons his child? But then I remembered the test. He wasn't my child, at least not by blood. That didn't make it hurt any less, though. If anything, it made it worse. Because I loved him. Still do, I suppose. But I couldn't stay in a family built on deception. The best I could do was slip away before dawn, so he wouldn't see me go. Elizabeth was in our bedroom, presumably asleep. I stood in the doorway, listening to her breathe. My stomach knotted at the thought that her breathing once comforted me. Now it felt like a stranger's. I watched her for a moment, torn between pity and resentment. Then I turned and left, quietly shutting the door behind me. In the silence of that hallway, I felt the last thread of my old life snap. I slipped out the front door, the night air cold against my cheeks. My heart hammered, but I felt a strange clarity. The kind you get when you've finally chosen your path. I stepped to my car, tossed in my suitcase, and drove off without a backward glance. The engine's low hum was my only companion as I headed toward an uncertain future. That was my revenge, removing myself from the equation. Letting her and Anthony scramble to pick up the pieces. She wanted a new life. Fine. I wouldn't stand in her way. My mind raced as I drove. I tried to muster sadness, or maybe anger, but all I felt was numbness. Like there was a new frosty shield around my heart. Images flickered through my thoughts. Elizabeth smiling at our wedding. Jack giggling when I threw him in the air. Anthony smirking at that park bench. The DNA results big bold 0%. Each memory jabbed at my insides, but I didn't cry. Men aren't supposed to cry, right? Or so I'd been told. Maybe that was just another lie we tell ourselves. By morning, I was in a rundown motel on the outskirts of town, the kind of place where the neon sign sputters and half the rooms smell like stale cigarettes. It didn't matter. I wasn't planning on staying long. I just needed somewhere to breathe, somewhere I could let my new reality sink in. The first day, I lay on the bed, staring at the cracked ceiling, my phone silent on the nightstand. Eventually, I powered it off. I didn't want her calls or texts or frantic apologies. If she wanted to fix things, she was a year too late. A strange routine took shape over the next week. I'd wake up early, pace the tiny room, drink bitter motel coffee. My mind felt like a broken record, replaying the final moments at home. The hush, her silent form, the hush again. Sometimes I punched a pillow just to release some tension. Other times I just sat there, numb. I had to figure out what came next. Find a new apartment, maybe. I still had my job, though the time off I'd taken left me with a stack of emails from my boss. But none of it mattered. All that once defined me, husband, father, provider, had lost its meaning. I planned to face Anthony eventually, not to fight him physically, but to ensure he understood the havoc he caused. But as the days passed, I realized it might not matter. I'd already told him enough. He was living in fear that I'd come after him. That was satisfying enough. Eventually, I turned on my phone. Dozens of messages from Elizabeth. Each voicemail was more desperate than the last. Michael, please talk to me. We need to work this out. I'm so sorry. But what could she say? Sorry I broke your heart, lied to you about our child, and made you question your entire existence. The words might be there, but I doubted I'd ever believe them. Yet, I did listen to them. Once. I found myself replaying her voicemails at night when the silence became too heavy, searching for any spark of sincerity. The tears in her voice did nothing for me. I was spent. Love doesn't die in a neat, quiet way. It shrivels painfully, leaving open wounds. By that time, I wanted only to heal, if that was even possible. What does a man do next? That's the question, right? Let's see. I was in a motel room. Single, whether legally or not. And weighed down by enough emotional baggage to sink a ship. My father's watch ticked softly on my wrist, a faint reminder of the man I once wanted to be. He taught me to be strong, to face life's challenges with integrity. But how do you stand tall when your foundation's been ripped away? I guess I took it 1 hour at a time. I contacted a real estate agent to list the house. My name was on the mortgage after all. Elizabeth didn't fight me on that. Maybe she figured it was the least she could do after everything. The agent asked for some details, and I gave them in a stony monotone. It felt surreal, dismantling the home I'd built with her. But that's betrayal for you. It forces you to tear down everything in your life and hope you can rebuild something new. One morning, about 2 weeks after I left, I got a text from Anthony. How he got my number, I'm not sure. Maybe Elizabeth gave it to him, or maybe he discovered it on some business directory. The text was short. I want to talk. Please. My first reaction was disgust. What in God's name could he possibly say to me that mattered? But curiosity got the better of me, so I replied with a single word. Where? He suggested a coffee shop downtown. A public place. Probably wise. I pulled up to the place, found him sitting at a table near the window, fiddling with a cup of black coffee. He looked up, eyes shadowed. He started to stand, but I waved him down. I sat across from him, said nothing. Let him speak first. He cleared his throat. I'm sorry, he began. I shouldn't have gotten involved with Elizabeth. I never intended to. I cut him off, voice low. You fathered my son. That's more than just involved. He lowered his gaze, nodding. I know. We didn't plan it. I swear it just happened. That phrase. I hated it. Things don't just happen. People make choices. They cross lines. They betray. I said, what do you want from me? He swallowed hard. Look, she's hurting. She doesn't want to lose you, and I don't want to stand between you two if there's any chance. I snorted. Chance of what? That I'll forgive her, and we'll sing Kumbaya with the kid you sired. He grimaced, took a sip of his coffee. I saw the tremor in his hand. Good. Let him feel some of my pain. It's complicated, he said after a moment, and I can't undo it. But I want you to know I never set out to ruin your family. I stared at him, feeling an emptiness in my chest. You expect me to believe that? If you truly cared about my family, you'd have walked away the moment Elizabeth opened her legs. He flinched at my crude words, but I didn't care. The truth is ugly. I guess I deserve that, he murmured, lowering his gaze. Then he tried again. But Jack, he's innocent in this. I clenched my jaw. Don't speak his name to me. Because that name still tore me apart. That child was the most innocent victim of all. But my raw emotions wouldn't let me see beyond the betrayal yet. Anthony tried to meet my eyes. I'm sorry. I really am. I rose to leave, feeling no closure, no relief. We're done. He called after me. Look, man. I pivoted, voice tight. I don't want your apologies. I don't want anything from you. Just stay out of my life. And with that, I walked out, shoulders tense, fists aching to smash something. But I kept it together. Barely. I'd like to say that was the end of our interactions, but betrayal leaves residual echoes. Elizabeth tried contacting me repeatedly, begging me to hear her out. I ignored her calls. She dropped by the motel once, pounded on my door until I answered. I found her standing there, tears streaming, hair disheveled, looking as if she hadn't slept in days. I let her in, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. We just stared at each other. The silence thick with a million unspoken words. Finally, she broke down sobbing. Michael, please, she whispered. I know I have no right to ask, but can't we try to mend this? I leaned against the wall, arms folded. Why? So you can lie to me again. She shook her head desperately, tears staining her cheeks. It wasn't like that. I was lonely. You were so busy with work, and I felt unseen. Anthony showed me attention, and I I made a terrible mistake. Several mistakes, I said, voice grim. You carried on an affair. You let me think Jack was mine for 4 years. That's not just one slip-up. That's 4 years of deception. She looked away, guilt etched into her features. I was scared. I didn't know how to tell you. You're such a good man, I couldn't bear the thought of losing you. Congrats, I said with a bitter laugh. You lost me anyway. She stepped closer, reaching for my hand. But I pulled back. She flinched like I'd struck her. I forced myself to breathe, remembering how she once fit perfectly in my arms. Now she felt like a stranger I didn't want near me. Her voice broke. Jack loves you. You're the only father he knows. Doesn't that matter? My chest constricted. Of course it matters. But that doesn't erase the betrayal. She pressed her palms together as if praying. We can try counseling, therapy, anything. I'll do whatever you want. Just don't leave us. I held her gaze. Part of me wanted to believe. Part of me wanted to forget everything and go back to the safety of ignorance. But a bigger part, the part that recognized the depth of her lies, refused. Elizabeth, I said quietly, I'm already gone. She collapsed onto the bed, covering her face with both hands, her shoulders shaking. I felt an odd mixture of pity and anger. She'd made her bed, literally, with another man. Now she had to lie in it. After a few moments, she looked up, eyes red-rimmed. What can I do to fix this? I inhaled slowly. I don't know if it can be fixed. Maybe someday I'll find a way to be civil for Jack's sake. But as far as you and me are concerned, I don't see a path back. She broke down again, sobbing harder, and I couldn't watch. I stepped outside, letting the door swing shut. Her muffled cries seeped through the thin walls, and I leaned my head against them, feeling the first twinge of tears behind my own eyes. I fought them back. Men aren't supposed to cry, remember? From that day on, I dove back into my work. My boss gave me a concerned look when I showed up, tie knotted too tight, eyes hollow. You okay? He asked. Fine, I lied. Let's get started. I buried myself in spreadsheets, forecasts, client meetings. I worked late, ate dinner alone in the office, and drove back to the motel in the small hours of the night. I knew I was running on fumes, but it was better than drowning in self-pity. Eventually, the real estate agent found a buyer for the house. It wasn't the best deal, but I didn't care. I wanted to sever that tie, to turn the page. Elizabeth and Jack moved in with her father for a while, or so I heard through a mutual friend. I made no attempt to see her, or Jack, or even talk to them, though she sent me updates. Pictures of Jack's preschool drawings, messages about how he asked where I was. I read them in silence, my heart twisting, but I never replied. In the midst of all this, I got a call from Anthony, which I didn't answer. He left a voicemail, stumbling over his words, talking about responsibility, and stepping up if I didn't want to. My rage flared. That man had taken everything from me. The nerve to ask if I was done with my own child so he could slip in as the father. I nearly smashed the phone. Instead, I deleted the message and stared at the wall for an hour. The final blow came about a month later. Elizabeth texted me that she had scheduled an appointment with a mediator, someone who specialized in complex custody or separation arrangements. She said she wanted me to at least be recognized legally as Jack's father if I desired. Or, if I didn't want that, to have it clarified. I stared at the text, cold realization sinking in. In the eyes of the law, I was the father, on the birth certificate, anyway. But biologically, I wasn't. It was a labyrinth of legalities and heartbreak. I thought about ignoring it. Let them figure it out. But something in me said I needed to close this chapter for good. So I showed up at the mediator's office on a cloudy afternoon. Tie loosened, a feeling of dread lodged in my stomach. Elizabeth was there, eyes puffy, wearing a pale blue dress that made her look washed out. Anthony was absent, which was a small relief. The mediator was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, but her comforting smile did nothing for me. We talked logistics, assets, liabilities, child custody. The mediator tried to be gentle, but I felt raw. Every line of conversation was about the child I'd raised not being mine, about the wife who'd broken my trust. Eventually, the mediator asked me directly, "Are you seeking paternal rights, or do you wish to relinquish them?" The question stabbed me. Once, I would have died for Jack. Now I had to decide if I wanted a legal tie to him. Elizabeth sniffled. "Michael, please. He needs you." My throat felt like sandpaper. "He needed you to be honest," I muttered. Then, more clearly, "I can't be in limbo forever. If Anthony wants to step up, if that's what you both want, then so be it." The words scorched my tongue. Elizabeth looked like I'd slapped her. "That's not. I." She clamped her mouth shut, tears slipping down her cheeks. I signed the necessary documents, half numb, half seething. The mediator explained I could still revise any arrangement if I changed my mind. I just nodded mechanically. I was done. I walked out of that office with a twisted sense of relief and sorrow. The chapter was closed, or so I told myself. I had lost a child, a wife, a whole life's worth of illusions, and yet there was a grim freedom in finality. The next few weeks were a haze. I found a small apartment near my workplace. I tried to resume something resembling normalcy. Sometimes at night, I'd dream of Jack calling me Daddy, and I'd wake up drenched in sweat, heart pounding. Other nights, I'd remember the first time Elizabeth and I made love in the old house, how she laughed afterward, breathless and radiant. Each memory felt like a dagger now. One evening, I came home to find a letter slipped under my door. I recognized Elizabeth's handwriting. Against my better judgment, I opened it. It was a long, heartfelt apology. She wrote about how she never intended for things to spiral, that she loved me, always would, that Jack missed me, cried for me, that Anthony was trying to be the father figure, but Jack kept asking for Daddy Michael. The letter ended with a plea. "We could still find a way, if you'll only try." I stared at that letter for a long time. Part of me longed to rip it to shreds, burn it, erase her words forever. Another part wanted to believe in redemption, in the idea that love can survive even the worst betrayal. But I'd learned that trust, once shattered, rarely comes back whole. In the end, I tucked the letter into a drawer, unread after that first pass. I never wrote back. As the months slipped by, I focused on self-preservation. I threw myself into projects at work. I joined a gym, trying to work out the anger in my muscles. Some days, I managed to feel almost okay, like a normal guy who just had a bad divorce. Other days, I found myself doubled over in the shower, shaking with rage or sorrow, silent tears mixing with the water. But I never cried in front of anyone. Because men don't cry, right? Eventually, there was a day I woke up and didn't immediately think about Elizabeth or Jack or Anthony. I took that as a small victory. Another day, I managed to smile at a coworker's joke. Progress, maybe. Healing, if you can call it that. Life moves on, they say. It just doesn't do it kindly. Every so often, I'd see Elizabeth's name pop up on my phone. I ignored it. She wrote emails, texts, even tried calling from other numbers. I'd answer occasionally, only to hang up when I heard her voice. I know that might sound cruel, but it was the only way I knew to protect myself from being sucked back into that hell. Then came the final confrontation, or maybe you'd call it closure. A year after I left, I was walking from my office to my car when I spotted a familiar figure waiting by the entrance. Anthony Delgado. My blood pressure spiked. I nearly turned around, but he caught my eye. He approached slowly, hands raised in a gesture of peace. "Michael, wait," he said. I gave him a hard stare. "What do you want?" He exhaled. "Elizabeth's in the hospital. She fainted. Stress, exhaustion. She's been struggling. She asked for you." My stomach twisted. "Why me?" He let out a shaky breath. "Because she still loves you. She's never forgiven herself for what happened. And Jack, he's worried too. He's old enough to notice something is wrong, even if he doesn't know the full story. I felt a swirl of emotions. Anger, concern, resentment, fear. I looked away. I'm not sure what I can do. He took a cautious step forward. At least see her. I'm not here to push you into anything. But she's in a bad place, and it might help if you showed up. I stood there, the city noise swirling around us, his words echoing in my head. Part of me wanted to walk away. Another part remembered the woman I once loved, the mother of a child I raised. Even if the illusions were shattered, the memories weren't. Finally, I sighed. Text me the hospital info. And I brushed past him, not waiting for a response. It took me 3 hours to muster the nerve. I drove to the hospital, my hands sweating on the steering wheel. I found her room number, walked down the sterile hallway, hearing the beep of machines. I paused at the door, heart racing. Through the small window, I saw her lying pale on the bed, an IV in her arm, eyes closed. Even like that, she had a quiet beauty. I felt my chest tighten with old emotions. I walked in, quietly. She opened her eyes, blinking slowly, recognition dawning. Michael. Her voice was weak, a ghost of itself. I stood at the foot of her bed. Anthony told me you were here. She tried to smile. Thank you for coming. I shoved my hands in my pockets, scanning the monitors and cables, avoiding her eyes. How are you feeling? She shrugged lightly, a faint grimace. They say it's stress. Anxiety. I've been hurting. Missing you. I swallowed. What do you want me to do about that? Her eyes shone with unshed tears. I'm not asking for anything you're not willing to give. Just, thank you for coming. It means a lot. We fell into a heavy silence, the beep of the heart monitor marking time. She reached for my hand. This time, I didn't pull away immediately. Her skin felt warm, fragile. Michael, she whispered, I know there's no going back to the way things were. But if you can find it in your heart to forgive. I shook my head, gently extracting my hand. I don't know if I can. You understand that, right? She nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. I do. Then, after a moment. But Jack asks about you. He calls you Daddy Michael. He draws pictures of you and him playing catch. Sometimes, I walk into his room, and he's talking to your photo. My chest felt like it was caving in. I'm sorry. I managed. But I can't. I'm not ready. She closed her eyes, tears leaking onto the pillow. I know. Another silence stretched. I breathed slowly, almost regretting coming. The pain was too raw. Then, in a voice that felt foreign in my own throat, I said, Heal, Elizabeth. Take care of yourself. Let Anthony help you if that's what you want. Just, don't expect me to step back into that life. She nodded, lips trembling. I won't. Thank you for coming. I lingered a moment longer, then turned and walked out. My heart pounded as I passed Anthony in the hallway. He looked at me hopefully, but I just shook my head. He didn't try to follow. I never visited again. Last I heard, Elizabeth recovered physically, though the emotional damage probably lingers. I'd like to say I found a neat resolution, but life isn't a simple puzzle. I remain estranged, forging a path that doesn't involve her or Jack. Maybe one day the wound will close enough for me to see him again. But not now, not yet. The pain is still too intense, the betrayal too fresh, no matter how many months or years pass. Sometimes at night, I wake up drenched in sweat, the memory of that DNA test blazing in my mind. Other times, I recall the moment I saw her in that hotel lobby, wearing a dress meant for someone else's eyes. And I wonder if I could have stopped it. If I could have recognized the signs earlier. The truth is, I probably could have. But I didn't. And so here I am, a man trying to rebuild his life from ashes. They say men aren't supposed to cry. Maybe I didn't, at least not in front of anyone. But my soul's done enough weeping behind closed doors. I lost a son, a wife, a future I thought was certain. And for what? A fling that turned into a child, a slow poison that killed my marriage. It still hurts like hell, but I'm learning to live with it, or at least exist alongside it. When I think about revenge, I realize I already got mine. My revenge was walking away, leaving Elizabeth with the weight of her own betrayal, leaving Anthony to pick up the responsibility he created. Let them struggle with the fallout. Let them explain to Jack why Daddy Michael disappeared. Let them live with that guilt. My only hope is that Jack doesn't suffer too much. He's innocent in all of this. Maybe someday I'll have the strength to be in his life as something resembling a father figure. But not today. For now, I keep going, one day at a time. I have an apartment that's slowly filling with my own furniture, my own sense of self. I keep my father's watch on my wrist, a reminder that I once had a solid example of how to be a man. I'm forging a new identity, unburdened by the lies that weighed me down. And maybe, just maybe, I'll allow myself to love again. But that's a distant glimmer, faint and uncertain. Some nights, I whisper to myself, it's over, hoping that saying it aloud will give it finality. But a part of it will always live in me. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the humiliating knowledge that I was replaced so easily. The memory of the child I called mine, who was never mine at all. That kind of thing leaves scars you can't see but can always feel. So I drive on through this life, a man marked by betrayal. And when I see couples holding hands in the street, I feel a pang of envy. When I see a father hoisting his kid onto his shoulders, I look away. But I keep driving, because that's all I can do. Keep going, keep breathing, keep hoping that maybe tomorrow will sting a little less. And that's the cruel irony, isn't it? A man isn't supposed to cry, yet he carries a well of tears inside him. A man isn't supposed to be weak, yet the betrayal of love can bring him to his knees. A man is supposed to protect and provide, yet he can't even protect his own heart. But we go on anyway, because that's what men do. Survive. We gather the fragments of our broken pride, patch them together, and keep walking forward. You can call it resilience or stubbornness or plain stupidity. But it's the only way I know. So I hold my chin high, clench my teeth, and face each new day. I have a job to excel at, a body to keep healthy, a mind to wrestle into submission. That's my life now. A life shaped by betrayal and tempered by heartbreak, but my life all the same. In the end, maybe that's the real lesson. Life doesn't stop when you're betrayed. It doesn't even slow down. The sun rises, the bills come due, your hair keeps graying. So you learn to live with the wound. And if you're lucky, you learn to see yourself not as a victim, but as a man who survived. Scarred, yes, but stronger, harder. And maybe someday open to the possibility of love again, if you're brave enough to try. But that's tomorrow's problem. For now, I'm just a man in a quiet apartment, listening to the hum of the city outside, telling myself I did the right thing by walking away, telling myself it's over. And if sometimes that voice in my head whispers, "You're still hurting," well, I can live with that, because the alternative is to drown in it, and I refuse. So here I am, writing this down, or maybe speaking it aloud to whoever cares to listen. It's not a confession, exactly, nor a cry for pity. It's just the truth of a man who learned too late. But I learned, and that's what matters. My father used to say, "You can't change the past, but you can decide what to do with your future." I'm trying, Dad. Lord knows I'm trying. And that, I suppose, is all any of us can do.